If you clicked on this video, chances are you played Spider-Man 2 on the PS2, Xbox or GameCube when you were young. But did you know that there were 5 other completely different versions of Spider-Man 2 that were developed in time for the film's release? Well, sort of. So I decided to ignore my wife for a week whilst I locked myself away and played through every single version of Spider-Man 2. Now I did say every version, didn't I? Does anyone else remember the Nokia N-Gage? You know, that handheld console that felt about as comfortable as telling your friends that you own an N-Gage? Anyway, it had its own version of Spider-Man 2, which released in North America back on the 6th of July 2004. Because, you know, nothing says freedom more than playing Spider-Man 2 on the N-Gage right after a celebration of independence, right? But what is this game really like? Well, you launch the game, call yourself Tob, obviously, and dive into one of the most thrilling cutscenes of the modern gaming era. Okay game, you've officially lost me. Since when is Spider-Man silent?
What are you doing up there?
Staying away from you.
It rides up in the crotch a little bit too.
Don't mind us, she just needs to use the elevator. Here's your change! Hey kiddo, let mom and dad talk for a minute, will ya?
I actually could not believe that the first mission in Spider-Man is a sort of freeform swinging section. I mean, this may be dated by today's standards, but I'm very surprised to see it on the N-Gage. So, we arrive at our destination, and now it's time to meet Dr. Octavius.
You must be a reporter from one of the science journals. I wish. I'm actually just a freelance photographer for the Daily Bugle. I'm also a science student at a local university.
Who wrote this script? Seriously, it sounds like that Batman script that was written by AI years ago. When it comes to the rest of the gameplay though, this is a very standard side-scrolling affair. Nothing too exciting in my opinion. You have a mixture of basic attacks, which to be honest can be very hit and miss. But there really isn't much to it, and honestly, after every level basically resulting to tracking back and forth to find a certain amount of hostages or defeat a certain amount of bad guys within the time limit, I think it's best we put this one down and leave it back in the past where it belongs. Now, let's kick it up a gear to a handheld console that you can't actually take phone calls on. I am talking about the Game Boy Advance. I wasn't lucky enough to own one of these as a kid. I was stuck with its much older, chunkier brother, the original Game Boy. But anyway, how does the web slinger actually control on this advanced, narrower, less grey brick? Well, it's alright actually. The still image cutscenes look like they were rendered from the home console version of the game with some slight tweaks, which I don't mind, honestly. At least Peter's mouth doesn't look like the gaping hole that he had in the N-Gage version. In that one, Peter looks a bit... But the game itself does share a lot in common with the N-Gage one, following a similar side-scrolling approach. However, not every mission boils down to saving the hostages in the time limit. The GBA version does also have a similar swinging style level. However, it acts as a sort of mission selector, meaning you can choose to do some side missions or carry on with the main quest. To be honest, it is really clunky and not the ideal way of moving through missions. As cool as it is for being done on hardware with so many limitations, I feel it works against the flow of the game rather than for it. The combat, whilst better than the N-Gage, is still quite stiff, leading to attacks not damaging an enemy despite making contact with them. Which, as we all know, it is important for a punch to land if you want to punch effectively.
Yeah! That's right in the McNuggets, mate!
So, like its Nokia counterpart, we'll just leave the GBA version alone for now. And now, it's time to put a touchpad on our GBA and slightly improve the graphics for Spider-Man 2 on the Nintendo DS. Oh boy, tie-in games on the Nintendo DS. Was there anything that screamed shovelware more than some of these movie titles of the early 2000s? I mean, just look at the likes of Ratatouille, Cars, and Garfield 2. Even Spider-Man 3 wasn't very good, which doesn't bode well for Spider-Man 2. I'm sure that you are not surprised to find out that this is yet another side-scrolling outing for our web-slinging hero. This time, however, moving through the environment is much more interesting as the camera actually pans around the location making you feel like you're not just moving in a straight line. And to the surprise of no one, the first mission tasks you with saving 5 hostages from a burning building. Unfortunately, like its GBA counterpart, the DS version is also pretty stiff. General traversal is kind of fun, however once you get beyond that and actually fight crime, it falls apart pretty quickly. First of all, the game has dedicated punch and kick buttons, but to be honest, there is absolutely no point in using the punch button, unless you want to keep repeatedly swinging at the air, you know, like an NPC sidekick. Enemies will constantly interrupt your attacks and sometimes they won't even be affected by any of Spider-Man's abilities, which is absolutely frustrating. Overall, this is probably the most repetitive game of the lot, but it at least didn't get too gimmicky with the touchpad. It left that to Spider-Man 3. I promise you, we are almost done with the handhelds. But I have just one more for you, and that is Spider-Man 2 on the PSP. And believe it or not, this game, it's actually really good. Now you could argue that this is partially because it just rips everything from Spider-Man on the PS2. And you'd be 100% right. Even the first mission is almost an exact replica of the first mission in the PS2 game. But honestly, this was a really clever decision, because it enabled the devs to give us a true 3D experience on a handheld device. My biggest issue with this version was that Bruce Campbell wasn't the narrator. But there had to be some budget cuts somewhere, I guess. Each level has a unique design and the combat itself provides enough challenge whilst maintaining a very fun and casual experience. I know I said this already, but this is literally Spider-Man on PS2, but with the material being changed to fit the Spider-Man 2 narrative, and I'm really okay with that. It even has some really cool encounters, with the Mysterio boss fight being a particular highlight. There really isn't much more I can say about this one, aside from the fact that you should give it a go. It really does hold up for a handheld game from 2005. Just be prepared for the awkwardness of the one analog stick movement and camera control, but it also features one of the best lines in any Spider-Man game.
Dr. Octavius, we have to stop that reactor before it's too late.
This is bad.
You serious?
Now I know you have all been waiting for me to talk about this one, so let's get to it. This is the one that solidified Spider-Man 2 as one of the best movie tie-in games of all time. This game needs no further introduction, so ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Spider-Man 2 on PC and Mac. Spider-Man 2 on PC is definitely one of the more unique versions. Translating the web-slinging, wall-crawling, arachnid-like superhero to mouse and keyboard would not have been an easy feat, but it is clear where they cut corners. For one, this is one of the shorter games on the list, taking me only about 4 hours to finish. Also, the game is restricted to the one-click method of older action games on PC. You might be thinking, what do you mean by that? Well, I'm glad you asked. The game maps the camera control to the mouse, as well as some basic actions to the left and right click. But because one hand is stuck on the mouse, and let's be real, most of us didn't have an 8-button mouse back then, jumping was mapped to the right click, and pretty much everything else was mapped to the left. Want to beat up some bad guys? Just left click. Want to swing from a web? Just left click. Want to deliver some pizza? Just left click. Actually, no. You can't do that here. Sorry to get your hopes up, but don't worry, we will talk about the pizza soon. So basically, depending on what you are aiming at with the mouse will determine what you do. Unfortunately, swinging became limited because of this. Now you had to aim at fixed points to attach your web rather than swinging freely like in the console counterpart. The game is still pretty fun. I must have been really harsh on it when I played it years ago, because honestly, whilst it is not amazing, I would definitely play through it again. But not before we talk about something a little bit better. I said I would get to it, so let's talk about Spider-Man 2 on the PS2, Xbox and GameCube. This is the one that most of us remember playing back in the day, whether it was delivering pizzas to that delightful soundtrack, or helping that 500 kid that can't seem to keep hold of his balloon.
I lost my balloon!
Try to hang on to it.
What do we say?
Or chasing Black Cat yet again whilst she leads you on with no promise of commitment, There was just no end to the fun that you could have here. By today's standards, it might seem a little simplistic, but for an early 2000s game to have a lot of different areas to explore, main quests and side missions, various traversal challenges, and of course everyone's favourite pastime, this game is a true marvel. Add to that a plethora of upgrades to unlock, as well as Bruce Campbell returning as the narrator, delivering some dry but hilarious jokes.
Okay, so the next thing I want you to do is jump off the building. I mean it, just jump. Hey, I wouldn't tell you to do something dangerous and life-threatening, would I? Come on. You always do what people tell you. You know, there's a word for that. Loser. So what now, wise guy?
On that point, did anyone else think that Bruce Campbell would have been the perfect choice to play Sully in the Uncharted movie? No, just me? Okay, moving on. I also have to mention those swinging physics. This is what made many players, myself included, truly feel like Spider-Man. You can now actually swing through New York with some real momentum, rather than just feeling like you're tugging on random strings from the sky. This was and is still the definitive way to play through Toby's second outing as the wall crawler. If that's not enough for you, there are also a large variety of bosses to encounter throughout New York, with honestly my favourite being the fight with Mysterio.
I will destroy you utterly. You will bear witness to the majesty and glory of my power. Prepare to die. You have trifled with my power for the last time.
Whoa, that was sick, dude.
But seriously, Spider-Man 2 on the PS2, Xbox and GameCube really has aged like fine wine, and whilst not perfect, it is definitely worth going back to even after all these years. I honestly didn't know what to expect with playing through all these versions of Spider-Man 2. It really was a mixed bag, with some good, some bad, and everything in between. I'd love to know which version is your favourite, so make sure to leave a comment and let us know if you would like to see more videos like this one in the future. Until next time, I've been Sam, and like Spider-Man, you've been amazing, and we'll catch you in the next video.